Well, greetings everyone and welcome. And if this is your first day here, and welcome to those of you who were here yesterday to the first and hopefully only virtual Ncma mid-year meeting. Now, as the title slide indicates, this is the SRW and Hardscapes Market Segment Committee meeting. My name is Wayne Villaluna, and I am the chairman for this committee. Now, I would like to thank everyone who has taken time out of their busy schedule to join us, and know that this session will last about 1 hour. Now, to get us started, we'd like to have a word from our sponsor, OpSmart.
Introducing OpSmart, shop floor management solution for world-class performance. Installed in 2 weeks, OpSmart automates scheduling, monitors results, documents improvement opportunities, and with its artificial intelligence engine, you can expect to gain 12 to 25% of efficiency while reducing business risk and improving quality and service. It all starts with scheduling. Shop floor order entry is easy, using all material and process requirements, leading to a drag-and-drop order board, easy revisions, and immediate publication to all floor operators. All product movements are then tracked, and every board is photographed, with artificial intelligence defining product type and acceptance. Overall equipment effectiveness shows downtime by cause and can be drilled into for details of each individual inefficiency. Patterns of these inefficiencies often lead to slight changes in practices to improve financial results. Automated delivery of results versus plan are color-coded for easy interpretation, showing above or equal or below objective based on operational parameters of your choosing. By accumulating normalized results from different plants each day, OpSmart even offers an executive dashboard to keep everyone informed, offering a culture of focus on performance from floor to C-suite. Move into world-class lean management with OpSmart to improve your bottom line and to establish and ensure world-class performance.
Well, thank you, OpSmart, and welcome back, everyone. Now, we are using several different platforms. We're using several different platforms throughout the mid-year event in order to provide the best technology for our unique session. In this session, we will be using the Adobe Connect platform. All attendee lines will be muted upon entry. Now, attendees may participate in the session by using the chat box. Now, if you need any help during the session, please do not hesitate to call on the Ncma staff at the number on your screen. Now, as you notice, this session is being recorded. So now that you've consented, you are being recorded. Now, please note the Ncma's antitrust policy, which can be found on the Ncma mid-year event website. All participants are expected to exhibit professional behavior in compliance with the policy, as well as Ncma's anti-harassment policy. And as I said yesterday, we know who you are, and we are still watching. Now, as noted in this slide, please refrain and disengage from any inappropriate discussions and report any concerns directly to an Ncma staff member. Now, something critically important to the continued success of our meetings are our sponsors. And we would like to take a moment to recognize and thank our mid-year sponsors, as you see on the slide. So sponsors, thank you so much for your participation and sponsorship. We couldn't do it without you. Now, this is an overview for the meeting today, the Strategic Plan Review and 2020 Work Plan. Now, this is a review of the process and the outcome of our strategic planning. It covers the details of what is and what is not in the new SRW Market Strategic Plan. This will be done by Nick Lang. Second is the Hardscape Market Insights with Michael Becker of Industry Insights. This is the company that performs the Srw Sales Survey. So if you participated, you know what I'm talking about. He will provide information on the market outlook specifically for Hardscapes products, SRW, ACBs, etc., in light of the coronavirus pandemic and what the future is going to look like. And lastly, we have Open Forum. We will be participating in an open exchange among members to ask questions or make comments by using the chat box. So if you have any questions for this forum on any NCMA topic, you can enter it now. And don't be shy. No such thing as a dumb question, unless collectively agree that it was a dumb question, obviously given this group. But anyway, you get my point. Now, before we get to the strategic plan review, let me give you a quick background on Nick. Nick is Vice President of Business Development and has been with the NCMA for 14 years. He leads the education and resource development for this association. He has managed the NCMA lab and is very involved in the ASTM standard development. He has a bachelor's degree from the University of Pittsburgh and is a registered engineer in Maryland. So let's welcome Nick Lang.
All right, thank you very much, Wayne. Excited to talk a little bit about the strategic planning process that we have going on through the SRW and Hardscapes committee. So to get started, I wanted to give everybody just a little bit of background. So both NCMA and the SRW market segment have strategic plans. NCMA's is a 3-year plan, and 2020 was the last year of that 3-year window. For SRW, the strategic plan was really last updated in September of 2016, and as you guys can probably see, it's time for critical review and development of new plans to help guide us in the future. Now, relative to how these two plans kind of interact with each other, the association's goals are, and really should be, relatively static and high level. The market segment plan, however, should really be more focused, granular, and detailed, and really identifying specific projects, objectives, and initiatives to help move the market segment forward. And really, that's what our committee has been working on through, since the last time they met. So since the NCMA convention, when our committees last got together in person, they've been working to develop strategic plans, not just for the market segment for SRW, but the other market segments as well. There's a couple of important points that I would like to bring up as we get into discussing this. First off, these plans are still in draft form. They haven't been finalized. They haven't gotten final approval from the committees yet. But the SRW committee, as well as the subcommittees underneath that market segment, have been reviewing these and talked about them on conference calls preceding the mid-year event. So if you hear anything that that you'd like to discuss or find out information about further, this is still an opportunity to provide feedback and information for the committee to consider. I'm just going to switch over to a different pair of headphones really quick. I see that some of you are hearing a little bit of cutting off, so just give me 1 second. And maybe the wired headphones will work a little bit better. Sorry about that. So yes, everything is still in draft. And then next up, each of these plans identify core focus areas for industry investment. And those core focus areas we'll go over, and especially some of the initiatives specifically within each of those. One thing we won't cover in a lot of detail at this high-level review, but that each of these plans and projects have tiered implementation levels based on increasing levels of industry investment. And each project, I'll give you a high-level overview of the projects, but each of the projects have a very detailed plan with individual tasks and quarterly benchmarks that the committee will use to help make sure that things are staying on track. And finally, the plan is intended to be a living document. And really the intent is that we will be able to use these for the future to keep track of how the committee, how the market segment is performing relative to the plan, and be able to make adjustments as necessary, both based on project progress and evolving market needs over the course of the plan. So in terms of overall objectives, the plans were really developed to build on the quote, "A goal without a plan is just a wish." And so feedback and input from the membership was received and has been synthesized into this draft strategic work plan that's going to help guide NCMA's efforts over the next several years. In refining the details of this plan, the overall goal of the market segment was held front of mind, and that goal is to increase sales and to grow market share. Now, as we looked at individual projects and programs, we did it through that lens of this collective goal. In some cases, there's recommendations to cancel programs that maybe aren't achieving that goal, as well as identifying those programs that may need some tweaks or some changes. And also, we did gap analysis to identify areas where we may need to invest that we're not doing right now, and where appropriate, try to identify some new projects or initiatives for consideration by the committees to help address those gaps. So the work plan is organized into a variety of initiatives and actions, and those initiatives are put into one of 4 different categories, as you see on the screen here. The first one on the top left is resources and implementation. This includes activities such as research, software development, and building code advocacy. Top right is education and outreach. This includes activities related to promotional efforts and targeted education of industry personnel, designers, and decision makers. The bottom right is workforce development, and these are initiatives and activities to support the growth of a robust installer workforce for our members' products. And then finally, on the bottom left is market share, which are NCMA's efforts to investigate the role of members' products in the construction industry to help influence informed decisions on how we invest. And now I'm going to take a deeper dive into each of those categories and give you sort of an overview of the different projects relative to the SRW market segment for each of them. So the first category is education and outreach, and like I said, the projects within this category are those that are related to promotional efforts and education of industry personnel, designers, and decision makers. Specific projects within the work plan for this category include online education. And so that is on-demand virtual education that is targeting industry sales personnel. This includes transitioning NCMA's in-person classes online rather than hosting those in-person courses. A lot of that is due to both changing market dynamics in general as well as an acceleration due to the pandemic we're now facing. I would make a note that this is not inclusive of the efforts we have relative to installer education. We're going to talk about those more under the workforce development one. But the online education identified here is really for those who work for block producing companies. And a good example is our commercial sales course that we do joint with ICPI, that we're looking to identify ways to do that online in the future. Next up, we have seminars and webinars. So these are both in-person and web-based training for designers in the industry. These may be hosted by NCMA, sponsored by members or by regional promotion groups, or even sponsored by third parties to have us come and talk to them about the different projects or products that our members produce. We then have our technical inquiry response line. This is where NCMA staff can provide free unofficial feedback and answers to questions related to your products. These can come from members, these can come from designers, these can come from installers, but it's a service that we offer and will continue to offer. We also have our industry liaison opportunities. These are outreach efforts to engage and educate national and regional partners while providing a feedback conduit that helps direct NCMA's efforts. Next up is membership communication. This includes e-news, social media, our annual report, email blasts, and other related activities that help to inform and engage the association membership. And these include efforts that we do to engage and inform you guys as members of products, services, and opportunities. Next up is promotion, which includes both direct advertising and other related promotional efforts targeting users and decision makers. This includes things like our magazine advertisement for the SRW best practices, exhibiting as part of the Hardscape North America trade show, and other types of those efforts, not only to promote the use of members' products, but also to promote resources that we have that can help designers to do their job. And then finally, we have our SRW Inspector Education, which is a newer initiative that's being done through the SRW Education Subcommittee, which is development and posting of educational content targeting SRW inspectors. There's actually a bit of a gap area that was identified, but we're already working on trying to fill that. and it would be a new educational opportunity for those SRW inspectors to give them information that they need about inspecting segmental retaining walls. In addition, there were a couple of gaps that were identified, two main ones. One is university curriculum. We noticed that there's not a lot of information out there for the for the designers out there relative to SRWs and hardscapes within university curriculum. And so we've identified some opportunities to develop educational content for engineering and architecture schools. Initially, these will be a lot of efforts relative to information gathering, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to start developing new stuff for them. And next up is designer education. And so also looking to develop online education for engineers on how to better design SRW systems, and we'll be deploying that through online, the online systems that we may have available. All right, so that covers the education and outreach category. Next up is for resources and implementation. The projects in here are those that we use for resource development and maintenance, research, software development, and building code advocacy. Specific projects include digital technology platforms. This includes development and improvements with Ncma's software packages such as SR Wall and some of those and other digital technologies that may help producers in the future. Okay. This also includes other things related to tech digital upgrades, which are taking our existing tech notes and then putting creating new versions of these that will be more useful for users and designers in the future, and upgrading all of our figures and that type of thing for use in the future. And I apologize. Looks like we have just the wrong presentation that is here right now. So I'm just trying to pull up something to help help discuss things a little bit better. Give me just 1 second, please. Sorry about this. Kayla, can I screen share?
Correct. I just added that in the backstage area, so if you want to share your screen for me, I'll make it visible for the audience.
Okay, perfect.
And just let me know once you're ready to pull that screen over.
I am ready now.
Great, your screen is live.
All right, everybody, I very much apologize. We had a little snafu in the slides. But anyway, so what you're actually looking at right now is the actual work plan document, and I'll just kind of step through things a little bit here. So if we get into our resources and implementation work plan, you can see that these are some of the things that we have identified specifically for resources and implementation. The first one, like I said, is the SRW design software, which is SR Wall, that's being updated right now. We also have the design manual for segment and retaining walls, maintaining and updating that. Our SRW best practices and our SRW installer guide. I already talked about the tech digital upgrades. We also have some other things relative to SRW research, which is primarily continuing our collaboration with FHWA to research freeze-thaw durability of our units. And then finally, probably the biggest one on the SRW code side is SRW standardization. We heard a lot about that yesterday, but it's really efforts within the TMS committee to develop new standardization methodology for segmental retaining wall design. As far as gaps, one of the ones that we had identified was building information modeling, or BIM, and trying to identify what new opportunities there are for hardscape products within BIM and what things that the industry could do in order to help develop tools that could enable users to better utilize SRW units within BIM environments. And so that covers our resources on the implementation side of things. The next one we have in terms of those broad categories is workforce development. And within workforce development, a lot of the efforts that we are doing is to get new installers and educate installers properly for installation of segmental retaining walls. So we have our SRW installer courses, which are ones that we offer a one-day in-person course, and we're working on identifying ways to transfer those online. We have our Train the Trainer programs to make sure that we have a good network of those trainers for those systems. We also have our efforts relative to hardscaping this collaboration between Ncma and ICPI to promote hardscaping careers to young folks. We saw a video about some of those efforts yesterday. We also are working on efforts for vocational schools curriculum, and that's providing our SRW installer content for use by vocational schools and colleges that offer landscape construction specialties. And finally, we're looking to explore new ways to deliver education online for SRW installers. It's something that we're just getting started out with, but again, given shifting market dynamics, may become an area that we have to focus on a bit more critically. And then our last segment is our market share segment. And really the main project we have within our market share segment is the Srw Sales Survey. This is our annual survey of block producers and licensors that tracks sales volume across all of our 6 Ncma regions. Now, it is important to note that this is a project that isn't necessarily focused directly on on market share itself. It's certainly a component of market share, but it's not looking at, relative share compared to competing systems. And so that is a gap that we have, and we have identified that. However, at the current moment, we don't particularly have a project identified that would help to fill that gap because it would require an increase in industry investment. So we're continuing with the Srw Sales Survey for now. That'll be something we'll look about in the future as well. So that really covers at a high level the components that are within the SRW work plan. Again, our committees will continue to work through this as they do their work throughout the rest of this summer and this fall to help finalize a plan here before the end of the year. So with that, I will, I believe, Wayne, turn things back over to you.
Sure. Well, Nick, thank you very much. I'm going to try and get us back on schedule with these slides to get us back to where we could go on the hardscaping market insight. That's okay. We thank you for your patience, everyone. So, I'm almost there. Okay. And before I go, there we go. Okay, well, now let's discuss the Hardscapes market insight. So let me give you a quick glimpse of Michael Becker's background. Michael has been with Industry Insights for 15 years, and in that time, he has led hundreds of research and benchmarking studies that primarily focus on the operations and performance of companies. Now, during this time with Industry Insights, his work has been cited by the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and many other mass media formats. He is a certified public accountant and holds a Master of Science in Predictive Analytics from Northwestern University and a Bachelor of Science in Finance, Risk Management, and Insurance from Ohio State University. Please welcome Michael Becker. All yours, Michael.
All right, thanks, Wayne. All right, so I will be going over some of the SRW and hardscape industry trends that we're seeing right now. Obviously, we're in a bit of an interesting and unique situation with COVID pandemic, so we'll go over some of that type of information. The main objectives are, I know Wayne just gave a little intro, but I'll just give you a little bit of insights about the company I work for, Industry Insights, talk a little bit about the Ncma Concrete Masonry and SRW Product Sales Survey, get into the economy a little bit, both pre-COVID and post-COVID, and how that kind of reflects on the industry. And then we'll go over some of the COVID impact on the SRW and hardscape industry. And then we'll just kind of wrap it up with looking forward and what we can expect or what we can forecast to expect to our best abilities as we move through the rest of 2020 and into 2021. Just to give you a little bit of information about the company I work for, Industry Insights. We're an objective third-party research company. We do primary research, which is things such as surveys and focus groups. We also do secondary research where we pull existing data from government sources, other research companies will use their information. And then we try to put it all together and kind of tell a story with that information. And that's mainly what we've been doing. We've been doing that for 40 years. And obviously, as mentioned, we do work for Ncma, and you can see there at the bottom. We currently work with more than 200 associations, including, in addition to Ncma, we work with ICPI, the Brick Industry Association, Precast Concrete Association, and the Construction Financial Management Association. So we have a lot of experience and knowledge in kind of your area, your industry, across multiple associations and multiple research projects. So just to give you a little bit of background on the Ncma Concrete SRW Sales Survey, we've been conducting that for Ncma since 2016, and we collect 2 years of data at a time on both CMUs and SRWs. And the goal of the project is really just to give a snapshot of what the industry is looking like. Obviously, we're collecting data on past years, so we're kind of looking in the rearview mirror, just figuring out what is going on, what happened in the past. Is there a shift in product type? Are there opportunities for you to take advantage of? Are any of the products kind of weakening in terms of customer mix, that sort of thing? We also do an estimate of the industry size. The estimate it's a tough thing to get perfect. So we've gone through many different ways of trying to calculate it. We've gone to the committees and boards trying to make sure it passes the smell test. But the most important thing that we do is try to figure out the directionality of the industry. We understand there's limitations on industry size forecasts. We do get the biggest players in the industry, for the most part, do participate along with companies and manufacturers of all sizes. But the most important thing is the directionality, and that's why we asked for 2 years of data. Because when we asked for 2 years of data on the survey, we're able to see what that percent change was from the prior year to the most recent year. And that's really what we're looking for. That way we can kind of show that information, present it to you, and let that kind of guide you moving forward to say, all right, here's what we're kind of seeing as what's happened in the past. Here's where everything's shifting. This is how we can prepare moving forward. And that's really, really the main goal of what we're trying to do there. So just to show you kind of what the estimate is that we have created here, you'll notice that we have seen the 2014, we don't actually have any data. That was kind of our base year where we had the information, but we didn't have the prior year, so we couldn't do a percent change. But you can see in general, we're kind of moving up forward. There's a nice overall trend going there. We saw a big pop in 2015 with a 6.5% increase from 2014. A little bit of a dip in 2017, but in general, we're seeing growth, pretty much kind of following with GDP more or less. We're not seeing huge growth there, but we are seeing growth, and that's really what's important. The 2019 figure, we have a percent change of 3%, and that's currently a preliminary estimate right now. We actually are still fielding that survey till the end of the week. So if anybody hasn't participated, you can go to ncmaresearch.com and fill that out, and your data will still be usable in the report, and then you'll get the results for participating as a thank you for participating absolutely free. So if you still want to participate, you certainly can. But we can just kind of see, in general here, this is what we're looking at for SRW production, our estimates over the last 6 years. Again, moving forward, a nice little uptrend line, but obviously things are a little bit different now. With the economy in general, pre-COVID, what we were seeing is GDP in general was starting to slow down a little bit in 2019. That was especially true in the second half of the year. There's a lot of information and there's lots of news articles saying, oh, 2019 was great, but under the hood, there were some weird things going on a little. We started seeing a slowdown Q3, Q4. The forecasts for 2020 were very modest. They weren't expecting 5% growth or anything. The GDP estimates were very small, 1-2%, if that by most economists. For the construction put in place, obviously very important for the industry, it was flat in 2019. It was actually slightly negative, but overall it was a 0% growth, but it was just very slightly negative. The initial CPIP forecast, we do forecasts for CPIP for several of our studies, and we were actually projecting a slight decline for 2020 as we ended 2019. That was true for other companies as well, like Dodge Data Analytics. They were also expecting a little bit of a dip in 2020. So overall, we weren't expecting a large dip, but we weren't expecting to see big growth in the construction world for this year. Now, the one thing that I mentioned, we had been slowing down, and at the end of economic expansions, that's what happens. You start slowing down, and then you go into a contraction stage of basically no growth and then kind of declining growth. But we actually had contradictory evidence in 2019. On the side of going into a contraction, we had interest rate cuts during the year. And you don't do that when we're in a booming society when interest rates are so low, unless there's something kind of going on a little bit where they're not expecting that growth to continue. So they reduced the interest rates to near 0%, trying to spur a little bit more growth. Let's see how long we can keep things going. We also had an inverted yield curve in 2019. And what that is basically it was saying that long-term debt vessels had, or like bonds, things like that, had lower yields than short-term. And that usually just doesn't happen. So when that does happen, they typically say you can expect a recession in about 6 months. And that happened last July. Sure enough, we had a recession, not the one we anticipated by any means, but something did happen, and it was just a sign of, hey, even if COVID didn't happen, things may have started to slow up even more. But at the same time, we also had historically low unemployment rates and huge job surpluses, which are indicators of a booming economy. So we had this weird kind of paradox going on of, these signs saying, hey, something's, expect a slowdown or a retraction or a contraction, but we also had these other things saying, hey, things are moving along, we're humming away. So it was just this really kind of weird thing that all kind of happened at the end of 2019. And then, of course, COVID hit, and that obviously changed everything. So we had the stay-at-home and economic shutdown that happened for multiple weeks or months, or still going on depending on where you're located. And the forecasts for the GDP and CPIP are really all over the place. We saw anything from a GDP basically being flat to down 20%. A lot of the banks and economists were expecting about a 5% decline for all of 2020 once things kind of settled down a little bit. And for those of you who just saw last week, they actually had the Q2 for GDP was a minus 36%, but that was annualized. So really we had a minus 9% for Q2. But that minus 36% was basically saying if we had that same quarter, 4 straight quarters, our entire GDP would be down over 36%. So it's pretty substantial, but at least it was just one quarter and not the entire year. CPIP itself, the forecasts were anywhere from minus 5% even down to minus 25% when everything kind of happened there. But now, many were projecting minus 10% at the time, but now we're saying that's not necessarily the case because as soon as all this happened, we went into lockdown. We got a flood of money that was printed and injected into the economy. And we're an economy that relies a lot on consumer spending. I mean, that's the most important thing that we have going. So all this additional stimulus money that came out, what it did, it kind of normalized things. And what we started seeing is People were talking about the V-shaped recovery or the L-shaped recovery or W-shaped recovery or whatever that might be. But what happened is we got all this money, and you can see on these two little tables, when we're looking at construction, we're not down nearly what we thought. Against that one on the left is May of 2020 versus April of 2020, and then May of 2019. And you can see versus May of 2019, we're actually slightly up for total construction, and we're up over 1% for total residential. And even before COVID hit, March was a really, really good year in terms of construction for residential especially. So we were coming into 2020 pretty hot. Things were going really, really well, and then this hit, and it kind of changed. But now we're getting back to where we had been. The table on the right of private residential, this is a really, really important one and really, really interesting. You can see that the private residential construction for CPIP is currently up 0.7% versus May of 2019. So that's May of 2020 versus May of 2019. We're up nearly 1%. But when you dig deeper into why we're up, it's not because of new single-family homes. It's not because of new multifamily homes. Those are both down. New single-family is down 4.4%. New multifamily is down 5.6%. But it's being completely dragged by improvements. You can see 11.5% growth versus the same month 1 year prior in May. And that's pulling all the private residential construction into the positive. And obviously, those improvements are really important because that's where the landscaping comes in. That's where other things of leisure and wanting your house and your place to look nice. We've seen that with this work from home kind of shutdown that we've had, and even schooling from home for those who have children and things like that. People want their house to be nice. They're spending more time in their homes, so they're doing renovations. They're making the exterior look nice. They're doing the landscaping. They're spending their money where they normally were going out to eat, or they were buying other things or going on vacation. That money is now being funneled into things that make their life better and easier while they're at home. So we're seeing there's the overall spending of the economy is down because we do have 11 million people unemployed, but the spending has really kind of changed, and that money is going to the home improvement, making your life easier and making things just nicer for where you're spending the majority of your time. So one thing we want to jump into here is that Ncma took part in a series of COVID surveys that Industry Insight had conducted. So there was a 3-part series that we did over March, April, and May. Basically, we surveyed a whole bunch of our clients. Our clients are associations, and we sent it out to them, and those who wanted to participate sent it out to their members. So we had people from all over the country and different industry types, from manufacturers to distributors, retailers, service providers, construction contractors, and people in universities. They were responding to the survey, and we got multiple thousands of respondents to this survey. So what we were able to do is really get this big picture of what was going on. How was COVID affecting all these different business types? And Ncma did take part in that. So just to give you some information about how those results kind of shook out, you can see there we had these surveys are lined up basically by each of the different month types. And you can see when we first started, right when COVID came out in March, Ncma respondents had just over 2% of the respondents had some sort of case of COVID amongst their employees. That moved up to 3.9% in April, and in May, that last survey that we did, 20% of respondents indicated they had a confirmed case of COVID at the company. So the effects of it obviously were felt. The more time that had passed, obviously the more likely people were to have somebody at their employment have COVID. That bottom set of tables there, when COVID hit, nobody knew what was going to happen. And I still think a lot of companies still don't know what's going to happen. But you can see when it first hit, this is how concerned the respondent was about the viability of their company moving forward. In March, there was over 9% that said they had major concerns about the viability of their company. and 24% said there was no concerns at all. In April, you can see how that started to shift. Now, the major concerns dropped to 4%, no concerns increased to 28%. So another month had passed, people are getting a little bit more comfortable. They were able to see, hey, this isn't necessarily as doom and gloom as maybe we thought in March. And then you can see in May, the major concerns dropped to 0, and the no concerns moved up to 40%. So again, more time passes. You can see that those companies were able to continue to stay in business. They were able to get loans through the government, and they were able to continue moving forward. And it's just very apparent, people started getting more comfortable with the situation, more comfortable with how their company was going to look moving forward. So very, very good news on that front. And then just some other information that we collected. The percent of companies experiencing delays from suppliers, in March went from 20% to 34% in April, and now up to almost 37% in that most recent survey in May. So you can see that the COVID itself it has an effect on the entire supply chain. Suppliers are delayed because they're just, everywhere down that line. If there's a little bit of a delay, it just adds up. Then you just get some larger and longer delays as we move forward. This bottom set of bottom graph and table, very interesting information. It's the percent of companies that were furloughing employees. Now, we didn't ask that in March because we didn't really know what was going to happen and how long this was going to take. But in April, 25% of respondents indicated that, and that's Ncma respondents, indicated they were furloughing employees. And that went up to 40% in the May survey. But of those that furloughed, and on that table on the right, that's from May, you can see almost all of them had hired everybody back by that time. So people were furloughing, and then they were just bringing them back as they saw that business was moving forward. They prepared for as if things were going to slow down. Things didn't necessarily slow down. Those employees were brought back. So very, very good and positive information. And then the May survey, what was the operational status of those Ncma respondents? You can see 80% of respondents said that they were already back to 90 to 100% of their operating capacity or what they had normally been operating at. So that's very, very good. That's much higher than a lot of the other respondents from the other industries and other types of companies. So that's very encouraging. And, you can see down there 75% to 89% was 15%, and then 50% to 74% was 5%, and nobody was below the 50%. So the respondents for that survey were saying things are getting back to normal. And we did have a question about the expectations of when the respondent would return to completely back to day-to-day operations as if COVID never happened. And interestingly, in the March survey, the expectation was everything would be back to normal in June. The April survey, the expectation was the end of September. Then in the May survey, the expectation was early December. So even though we're seeing that most people are back to 90 to 100% of operational capacity and their operational status, it's still going to take some time to get fully back. 90% is good, but everybody wants to be back to at least 100%. The expectation is still a few more months before that fully happens. And a question we did ask was the top challenges being faced due to the COVID pandemic. These are kind of expected. One, economic uncertainty, that was the biggest one. Employee safety, huge one, especially in this industry. Managing overall safety was number 3. Customers going out of business, that's a big one. Number 4, especially if you're doing commercial or kind of restaurant work, those are big ones. And then number 5 was communication. So looking forward, in general, we're really in uncharted territory here. We're very cautiously optimistic. I am a CPA, so by nature, I'm a little more conservative with my expectations, with my forecast, with what I think moving forward. just because I don't want to go all in thinking things are great and then not having things be the way that, being overly optimistic. And vice versa, I don't want to think it's all going to be doom and gloom when there's a very good chance that we're going to be more status quo. But in general, we are cautiously optimistic. We all want things to continue to go well and move forward, and the economy to grow and business to move to grow and move forward as usual. If your sales are up, keep riding that wave. A lot of that's going to be determined by geography and things of that nature. Your customer mix. Are you residential? Are you commercial? Are you taking advantage of that situation? And if you are, and sales are really hot, definitely keep pushing on that. A lot of times there can be a misperception of, things are, somebody will say, things are going so well, and you might be sitting there thinking, wow, everyone's saying it's great, but I'm not doing so well. That happens all the time because if you're doing really well, you like to talk about it. But there's always going to be some companies that aren't necessarily doing as well as everyone else. So just know that if you're hearing only positive news, there's other companies like you who might not be doing so well. But if you are doing well, keep riding that sales wave. But just be prepared for slowing growth or decline moving forward in the rest of 2020, 2021. 2020 we did kind of have a stoppage, and we got some backlog. And that's getting caught up to right now. So just be prepared, in case that doesn't continue to move forward, the amount of work and sales being brought in. Because we have to remember, we still have millions unemployed, and our consumer spending is down. But what we don't know yet is if we're going to have continued stimulus packages being approved, which one's still out there right now, and how long can that get stretched out? Are we going to continue to add and push money into the economy? And if we do that, then that consumer spending is going to continue, and everyone's sales is going to kind of rise up with that. But we don't know yet. So just be prepared and take advantage of the things that are out there right now, but just be prepared in case things do start to fall down a little. And just one kind of word of warning as we move into these unknown territories of data and things like that. Just be very, very cautious when you're reviewing numbers. Headlines are going to be trying to catch your eye. They want you to click on it. They want to spur discussion, and the news in general just wants that. And the issue that can happen is people, they're going to make the data say what they want, right? They want optimism. They want people to feel good. Or the opposite, maybe they want pessimism to drive more traffic there. Just be sure when you're making business decisions that you're really analyzing what this data is saying. So on this slide here, I kind of highlighted something. This is directly from the census on houses sold and our things that are for sale. They have a big disclaimer on their website. And that the part in yellow and green is really important. It says, many governments and businesses are operating on a limited capacity or have ceased operations completely. The Census Bureau has monitored response and data quality and determined estimates and the release meet publication standards. So what that's saying is when they send out the data collection instrument to these companies, they're finding that the companies aren't responding as much as they had been in the past, the number of respondents. That's because they're either too busy trying to stay in business or they're no longer in business. It is really what that is saying. And if they're no longer in business, that's obviously a problem. So what the government's doing is they're making estimates for that missing data, which is a normal practice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to badmouth their data or anything like that. It's just something that you should be aware of, that they are making estimates. And in that yellow highlighted box at the bottom there, this is just one example. For instance, it says that the percent change of the new houses sold was 6.9%, that bottom one, for June 2020 from June 2019. That's a positive 6.9%. But that plus minus on it is 13.7%. What that's saying is they feel that that number will fall anywhere between 22% and negative 7%. So we have a really, really wide range there that growth can fall into. So basically the point of this little exercise was just to show you that the data, if you're making a business decision, dig a little deeper into it. Make sure you understand what you're saying. Don't just go off of headlines because they can change that data a little bit to make sure to just draw in that kind of clickbait type of thing, make you feel emotions and keep coming back to those news headlines. So if you're making a business decision, dig a little deeper, make sure you understand what's going on that. Okay, and that kind of wraps up my slides here. Pass it back to Wayne.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Michael, and great job. A lot of information, a lot of stuff to chew on as we kind of go through there. Now, remember, if you have any additional questions or comments for Michael, please go to the chat box and enter your questions and comments. So thank you again, Michael. Great job. And the next slide is we are now going to have a video from our sponsor, Columbia. Okay. I'm not exactly sure what's going on right there. Hey, Kayla, is the commercial finished or do we want to run that again?
Yep, the commercial played through. We're all set.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, now it brings us down to the open forum. So we have come to the time where we can address some questions and comments that we weren't able to either get to earlier or after the segment ended. So Gabriella, do you have any questions for us, please?
Sorry, I am muted now. Yes, there was a question on when will the Srw Sales Survey be released?
Okay.
So the sales survey, we, as I mentioned, are still fielding that till the end of the week, and that's at ncmaresearch.com if you'd like to fill it out. And then once we have shut down, it's usually a multi-week process, and I would expect we'd have that out sometime mid-September.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else, Gabriella?
So we did have, hang on, I got this one. So Gabriella, we have another one that came in for Mike. Was, you know, he was talking about the trend about, you know, increased spending on home improvements. And I think the question was, do you see that trend possibly continuing through 2020? Because I know some of that the home sales stuff has been beneficial to a lot of our members. Do you see people continuing to be spending more on home improvements and those types of things and some of the other spending opportunities?
Yeah, I definitely think that home improvement is going to continue being a major part of the overall construction for the residential. You know, inventory itself is kind of low, at least in Columbus, Ohio. We're a few years back in terms of inventory for new homes. But in general, I do think that the improvements is going to continue to grow. As I mentioned, people working from home, schooling from home, just spending their time in their homes is going to be a situation where they want that to be as nice as possible. You know, they're putting in home offices, they're spending their whole day there. So that's going to be a really big thing. And we're also kind of just seeing in general people moving to larger homes because of that, or moving out of the city into some suburban areas to have that work from home experience being a little bit more important and critical. So we continue to see, we're expecting to see that improvement to continue to grow through the rest of 2020.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've got about 5 minutes before our session ends. Perhaps one more question if we have any.
This one is for the strategic plan, and this one was, it's for Nick. They were asking if, are we considering BIM for SRWs in future years?
Yeah, it's a good question. Building information modeling is something that, through Ncma's foundation, we invested heavily in relative to concrete masonry over, I'd say, about the past 5 to 6 years. That hasn't focused directly on the hardscape markets. And one of the things is, as we started to look at gaps when we were doing the strategic planning process, is that, potential for BIM opportunities is certainly one of those. One of the things that we don't know if we've got a full picture of is what can the industry do? What sort of resources, what sort of additional tools are necessary from an industry perspective to help move things forward? So we're working on developing sort of a pilot project that would sort of do that investigation. And so looking at what the current state of hardscapes in BIM is right now, what things are being done by individual companies, and what things could be done by the industry to help producers and our members kind of leverage those things. So it was very similar to how we approached this on the masonry side, which is we did a smaller project to kind of create a roadmap, and that gave us the opportunity to engage other partners and invest a bit more heavily. So look for that in 2021 in terms of trying to sort of frame the issue and identify what we can do as an industry. And then, hopefully that helps to inform, decisions on supporting that in future years.
All righty. Well, Nick, thank you very much. Now we're coming up to what's next. So after this session, we have 2 left, 3:15 Eastern, 12:15 Pacific, manufactured stone, and then government affairs, what's next. But don't forget the social event tonight. So we have social networking, the hour, beer tour, and e-happy hour. Now the beer tour is at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Now those involved with the beer tour, you've already received your special little box. But if you don't have one, that doesn't mean that you can't participate. So grab a beer, some cheese, chips, nuts, whatever. Use your imagination and come and join us. And then the E-hour is after that at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and it's just a continuation of the networking and just getting together. So wanted to mention that. And then comes to the thank you. So incredibly, we've made it to the end. So we'd like to say a couple of things. First off, thank you so much for joining us today and yesterday. It really means a lot to us at the Ncma as well as the industry for us to get together and meet regardless of the difficult circumstances. Second, thank you to our speakers for sharing their activities and insights and encouraging us all to continue to strive forward. And third, thank you so much to our sponsors for supporting us in this incredibly challenging time. And last, but certainly not least, the entire staff at the Ncma, Kathleen and Bailey and Kayla at First Source Events. If you ever try to do anything like this, it's not as easy as it may first appear. So thank you so much for all of your hard work, and a special thank you, and I do mean a special one, for Gabriella and Nick, who have worked so tirelessly to prepare me for this. So please complete the poll before you leave the session. Your feedback is very important to us. And those of you who have had negative comments about me in the poll, I know who you are. Just keep that in mind. And then also, assuming that things settle down, our annual convention will be in Nashville, Tennessee on February 12th through the 13th, 2021. And yes, that is Nashville. So let's start hoping and praying that that actually occurs. And until then, you and your families stay safe, and may God bless America. Thank you again, everybody.